Welcome to my channel. Today I will be reading from the r/no sleep subreddit, so let's jump into it. Deadly Promises. I work as a nurse in a pediatric cardiac ICU. I have worked there for 12 years. I love my job. The patients are amazing and the families always make me smile, especially when the kids get better and their parents want to say thank you. Many of the gifts we receive are homemade by these parents. We have a shelf where we store all of the artwork made by our kiddos and, of course, the edible gifts. We also have a box full of non-perishables that is always stocked with goodies, thanks to one family who has a daughter who was born with half a heart. This family truly is an inspiration to us all, because they have never let anything stop them from showering our unit with kindness, even though they have had every reason to hate us. One day I was making my rounds and came across a child that we'll call Patient A. He was born with hyperplastic left heart syndrome, which means his left ventricle was severely underdeveloped. His only chance at a normal life was to receive 2 open heart surgeries. The first surgery was to reroute blood flow to bypass the underdeveloped ventricle. This surgery is called the Norwood, and it is done shortly after birth. The second surgery is called the Jati, and it's done around 3 to 6 months of age. In this surgery, we take tissue from the right side of the body and use it to reconstruct the left ventricle. Patient A was 5 months old, and it was time for him to get his JAT. So I went to see how he was doing before his surgery. I noticed that he wasn't intubated like he was during his Norwood. It was actually really cool to see him breathing on his own. I asked his nurse what happened, and she told me that he had been extubated the night before. Patient A wasn't supposed to be extubated yet. So I immediately went to check his chart. His surgeon had ordered the breathing tube to be taken out, but there was no indication why. And as I scanned through the rest of the chart, I saw nothing that would explain why such an important step could be skipped. I knew that if I didn't do something, Patient A wouldn't make it through the surgery. So I walked down the hall to find the surgeon. I introduced myself and explained that Patient A had been extubated without an order from him. I also explained that I don't think he's ready to come off the ventilator. The surgeon looked at me and said, "He's been stable for weeks. You know how hard it is to keep him intubated. It's time to let the kid breathe." Then he walked away. At this point, I felt that my opinion was being disregarded and I was worried about my patient. So I called the surgeon back and told him that I wanted to talk about Patient A's care plan in front of witnesses. He got very quiet and then agreed to come back and talk with me. When he returned, I informed him that I was uncomfortable with the plan and I recommended that he keep the baby intubated until he is more stable. At this point, another doctor came in and asked what the issue was. I explained the situation and the other doctor agreed with me. The surgeon threw his hands up in the air and said, "Fine, whatever." I was concerned, but relieved that the surgeon had reconsidered his decision. After rounds, I went to talk to Patient A's parents. They were so happy to see me, and they were also excited to tell me that he was breathing on his own. I explained that he wasn't supposed to be off the ventilator, and that I was afraid he may not make it through surgery if he's not intubated. They were understandably upset, and told me that the surgeon had promised them that this surgery was a walk in the park compared to the Norwood, and that he would let their son come off the ventilator early. I apologized profusely and assured them that I would do everything in my power to ensure their son's safety. As I turned to leave, I heard the mother whisper to her husband, "I hope you're not making the same mistake you made with our daughter." I froze and I asked, "What?" She looked at me and calmly said, "Nothing. Carry on." As I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. I kept thinking about what the mother had said, and I couldn't figure out what mistake she was talking about. The next morning, Patient A's surgery was first on the schedule, so I arrived at the OR just after the anesthesia team got things started. Before I knew it, it was my turn to go in. As I pulled on my gown, I tried to calm my nerves. What if the mother was right? What if something terrible happened to patient A? Was I the reason why? I took a deep breath and pushed those thoughts away. I put on my mask and entered the operating room. The surgery started out like any other. I scrubbed in and got to work. About 45 minutes into the case, I heard someone yelling at the circulating nurse. I couldn't hear what was being said, but I could tell that the person was very upset. Shortly after, the surgeon came out of the room, visibly upset. I stopped what I was doing and asked the circulating nurse what happened. She whispered, "The surgeon just told me to get the cardiopulmonary bypass machine ready. There's a problem and he needs to redo the entire thing." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Surgery had already been going for almost an hour, and now the surgeon needed to start over. I walked back into the OR and saw patient A hooked up to the heart-lung machine. The perfusionist had gotten everything ready for open-heart surgery. I looked at the surgeon and asked what happened. He wasn't intubated long enough. He crashed on the table. Now his heart is too weak to pump blood. I felt sick to my stomach. This was all my fault. With CPR, the surgeon was able to stabilize the patient and get him back to the ICU. I rushed to grab his chart. It had a new admission note and a list of orders. The surgeon wanted him intubated and ventilated. I raced to his bedside and watched as the respiratory therapist intubated him and the medical team started chest compressions. I reached for the crash cart and grabbed epinephrine. I was shaking as I drew it up. It had been 8 years since I accidentally killed a patient. I was a new grad working in the pediatric cardiac ICU. One of my first patients was a baby girl with a congenital heart defect. My job was to monitor her closely and report any changes to my charge nurse. Well, I missed a change, and when I finally realized what was happening, it was too late. I reacted too slowly, and she died in front of me. I still remember the look on her face. It haunts me to this day. After that incident, I vowed to never let another patient die because of me. But here I was again, staring at the possibility that I had just killed another patient. Suddenly, patient A's eyes opened. I jumped back in surprise and saw that he was looking around the room. I leaned closer and asked, "Can you hear me?" He tried to speak, but all that came out was a gurgling sound. "Do you know where you are?" He shook his head. "Is anyone there?" He cried out as he tried to lift himself up. I pressed the call button and yelled for help. "He's awake and he can't speak. I think he has a tongue blade in his mouth." It turns out that patient A had aspirated his own stomach contents. I had given him the wrong medication, which slowed his breathing. That's why he was able to pull the breathing tube out of his trachea, and it fell into his esophagus. I felt horrible. I wanted to crawl under a rock and never come out. Over the next few days, patient A slowly regained consciousness. He was transferred to the step-down unit, and eventually he was discharged home. His parents were grateful to everyone on the floor except for me. They avoided me at all costs. I understood why, but it still hurt. A few months later, I was taking a break when I heard a commotion outside. I walked out to see what was going on, and I saw patient A playing with the other kids. He was laughing and having the time of his life. Just then, his parents came out and joined us. They thanked me for saving their son's life. They had talked to other nurses and doctors and learned that I was the one who had called for help when I found patient A choking. They also thanked me for advocating for their son and standing up to the surgeon. They explained that their daughter had died because of that same surgeon. He had ignored their requests for tests because he was sure that she was fine. 2 weeks later, she had a cardiac event while they were visiting her. He operated on her, and miraculously she survived. But because of the delay in treatment, she suffered brain damage and was left with severe disabilities. I was shocked. I had no idea that patient A's parents had lost their daughter because of this jerk. I'm just glad that I was able to save their son. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, check out my podcast. Thanks again, and see you next time.